Welcome to House Call with Dr. Mac, where you get a real doc with straight talk for the whole you. We're here back in the House Call community for another conversation, and this week we're going to highlight an individual's health story. And I am just elated to have my neighbor to consent to share her story with us. Welcome to the community, Pam.
Thank you.
You know, I talk about connecting our health dots here in the House Call community. We have individuals come in and give their health stories. We have healthcare providers and other experts come in and give their perspectives. And it's our mission that when people take us into their homes, allow us to make a house call, to take us on their walks when they're in the gym or walking around a pond or doing something in their everyday life, that they're able to connect their own health dots and begin to experience whole person care. And I like to connect the dot of how a guest came to sat down in the community. It's been about 8 years that we moved into this neighborhood community, and you and your beautiful son welcomed us with open arms. And we've watched your son grow up. We've watched each other go through the ebb and flows of life. And there was something that happened to you April 12th, 2015, and we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
So you're our neighbor across the street. That's our dot of connection.
Right.
And I'm doing, outside working or picking up mail or something, and our neighbor across next door to me asked, did I hear about what happened to Pam? And I said, no, what happened to Pam? So Pam, tell us your story from April 12th,
April 12th, right.
2015.
Tell you what happened to Pam?
Yeah.
So my son and I were on a trip visiting family in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting ready to come back home. We were in the airport, and
We're fine.
And I remember getting really tired. We had just gone through security, and I was tying my shoes, and I told my son, son, I said, Mommy's really tired. And I sat down on the floor, and I fell over. And there was a lot of commotion, and apparently I'd had a seizure. And I remember hearing my son say, Mommy, are you okay? And hearing people just running around. And I passed out, and I woke up. They were putting me in the ambulance, and I passed out again. They took me to the hospital, and apparently my little soldier was calling my family, and when I woke up in the hospital, my mother was there, and it turns out that I had a cerebral brain aneurysm, and I ended up in the intensive care unit for 3 weeks. They had to put coils, the platinum coils, in one of the blood vessels right behind my sinus cavity.
Okay.
And I'm just happy that I'm here. I was lucky that I was able to get assistance so quickly.
Yes.
And I ended up, as God would have it, in one of the best neurological institutes in the country.
Really?
Yes. So...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a very succinct story. I appreciate it. We're going to go back a little bit, and I like kind of inserting the science and the medicine when I can. I am not a neurologist. I don't claim to be. I just like to, like I said, when I can, I want to insert. Now, you talked about getting tired. Was that the first time you had ever had a seizure?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
So no prior symptoms to that point?
No, not that I'm aware of. Now,
Okay.
with this trip, on the flight out, I thought that I just had allergies, and so my sinuses were, how your ears pop?
Yes.
And you can't clear them, and I just had a lot of, just pain, trying to figure out how to get rid of it. And even the whole time we were there, about 10 days.
Right.
it was something that I couldn't get rid of. I was taking sinus medicine. I was taking allergy medicines. So I don't know if that was a precursor to what was going to happen, because that's never happened to me before.
Yeah.
Not on an airplane.
And, you know, I was doing just a little bit of surface research, as they would say, and it was talking about how the majority of patients don't have any type of symptoms.
Right.
And the morbidity and mortality from an aneurysm, a cerebral aneurysm, is very high. And it's very important to seek medical care immediately.
Exactly.
And with you not having any known, like you said, known symptomatology before, with you having that just instant event and your son knowing what to do, the people at the airport knowing what to do to get you to that medical treatment immediately was very key in what could happen to you within the next week, within the next 3 months, within the next year, as we're going to see.
Right.
And so now you did start talking about a little bit about where it was located. And you're saying it's behind your sinuses.
Right. It's behind my sinuses. So part of the follow-up that we do is every 6 months I do a cerebral angiogram.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit about what that is for you? When you what does that entail for you?
So what that is going in, and they actually take a catheter and they go up through my groin, and it's got a camera on it.
Okay.
And they're shooting dye in different parts of my brain, and the neurosurgeon is able to see the different areas. And on my first one, which was only, now we'll do it every 6 months, but it was maybe 2 months ago, when he put the scope in immediately, because he could see the screens right there, he said, "Oh, I know why you had the aneurysm." And of course I was like, "Let me know." He said that the back side of the blood vessel behind my sinus cavity was really thin. And he said that it was just malformed, when I was born. And he said eventually it was going to burst.
Wow.
So, of course I said, "Well, if you see anything else,
please let me know."
Talk about
exactly. Wow. So you're saying, so let's, and I just didn't realize that we didn't take a time out to also define what an aneurysm is for some people, to let them understand. So an aneurysm is a weakened area of a blood vessel that tends to balloon out like a balloon when there's excess pressure.
Well, so balloon or rupture. Mine actually ruptured.
Yes.
Which honestly I think may have been a blessing as far as me not having lasting effects.
That's true.
Because when it balloons, that puts pressure on your brain for who knows how long.
That's true. And that becomes what is known in the medical field as a space-occupying lesion, which means it starts taking up space in your brain and pushing against those structures.
Right.
And that's when you can sometimes see neurological, we call them deficits.
Right.
So people will start exhibiting signs of what could look like signs from a stroke.
Right.
Even.
Exactly.
Wow. Or start having seizure activity where all of a sudden I'm starting to have seizures. I didn't have them before, and don't know why, and now I'm having them.
Right.
And so he looked and was able to map the blood vessels in your brain.
Exactly. So when he was shooting the dye, it was green.
Okay.
And I know this because every time he shot it, he'd tell me, "Take a deep breath." And then he'd say, "You're going to feel it on this part of your body." And I could see green on the blood vessels across my eye.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing.
And you're awake during this process.
Yes.
Now, are you supposed to tell him if there's a difference? If you're feeling anything weird, or he's just looking?
Well, I think he's just looking at that point. What he said he was doing, and I had to get film from right after the surgery, so that he could compare to make sure that the coils hadn't moved.
Okay.
To see if they need to go back in and do anything else.
Okay, and this is part of that follow-up, and I wanted to talk about your follow-up after your surgery.
Okay.
This, right after having surgery, or let's talk about the surgical part of this. You said you had coils placed. Did you have a shunt placed as well?
I did. I eventually had to have a shunt placed. I was in ICU for 3 weeks because they were trying to see if my brain would start pumping the cerebral spinal fluid on its own. And it didn't. So they had to put the shunt in order to get, all of, because I had blood on my brain just in a massive amount. So they needed to put the shunt in order to ensure that I was going to get the blood pumped off of my brain.
Wow. Now, for those of you that are able to see the behind the scenes on our YouTube channel, you'll see that Pam has this gorgeous hair just flowing down her shoulders. And what I remember from medical school, which was a while ago, I was on a neurosurgical rotation. And I remember us having to place a shunt in a lady who had a different type of reasoning for it, medical diagnosis. And she was having this shunt placed from childhood. So she would have revisions, is what we would call them. Her hair was just as long as yours, down her back. But I remember us having to shave a great portion of her hair. But when you came home, I do remember you still having this beautiful hair hanging down your back. So were they able to just take off a smaller patch of hair?
Well, so I actually am still friends with the nurse who placed the tube in the front of my head, and she was part of the team that did the shunt. And she told my mom, I'm going to do everything I can to save as much of her hair. And so that's why my hair's parted on the side, because it actually is shorter underneath.
Okay.
You can see it's grown out a lot. It's been a year now, so my hair grows fast. But I had stitches in the back of my head, and I just have a lot of hair.
That's a blessing.
I just have a lot of hair.
And we thank the nurses that do care about that, because that's part of being a person.
Right.
I was talking to another physician here in the community a few weeks ago, and we talked about how medicine tends to take us and dismember us because of all the different specialties and not look at us as a whole person. And something as simple, some people will think as simple as, my gosh, she needs to be more concerned about the blood that's on her brain than the hair that's on her head. But that's part of the care that we get. And so we thank all of the healthcare providers that think about a whole person and not just a system.
Right. Well, and it was where I was at the Barrows Neurological Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, and they were fabulous.
Wow.
They were fabulous. I had another nurse who came in and actually sponge bathed my hair.
Are you serious?
Because, she said if she were in the same position, she would want somebody to do that for her. And, we're not friends on Facebook, or we weren't at the time, but I was posting pictures and my friends were like, oh my God, but it meant so much to me just to feel like, I can still be attractive.
Human. Yeah. And have,
to some degree with a tube hanging out of the front of my head. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. I joke about it because I don't think I realized how serious it was when it happened, which probably worked in my favor because I didn't spend a lot of time worrying about whether or not I was going to get better. It was just when. I have my son who, a few days after it happened, his father came and picked him up and brought him back to Maryland. So I really needed to get home to take care of my family.
Absolutely.
And, it didn't occur to me that I might not get better.
Wow.
And so I joke, because the same nurse who did the tube, I wanted a root beer float, and she searched that entire hospital till she found me a root beer. And I joke with her now because I say, what I didn't know is you were thinking this might be her last meal.
Oh, help us. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
But, yeah, I really think that my attitude helped a lot. And the nurses told me they were fighting over who was going to get to take care of me because, as you can imagine, in a neurological, situation, most people don't have the ability.
Exactly.
And I was joking with them, and within the first 4 or 5 days, I was up walking around.
Really?
I was pushing my pole because it was taking the brain fluid off, but I was walking around, and that was because I knew in order to get out of there, I was going to have to be able to walk.
Wow.
So, you make decisions. You make decisions.
That's key.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. To be very intentional
Mm-hmm.
about your own care.
Absolutely.
And you have to be very involved in your own medical care.
Well, and I think even though I didn't understand everything that was happening, and maybe I didn't appreciate, I knew what I needed to do. I knew that walking was something that you had to do.
Right. You knew there were certain things that I need to do on my end as they do on their end, their things, that when we come together, it's going to help me get better.
Right. Right.
Wow. Now, you were there for 3 weeks.
I was in the ICU for 3 weeks, and then I spent another week at my parents' house before I came home.
Before they cleared you because you were going to have to fly.
Right. Exactly.
And come back.
Which was a terrifying experience because I had the aneurysm right before I got on the plane. If I had gotten on the plane and had the aneurysm in the air, I probably would not be here today. And so it was, that was a whole nother mental thing that I had to go through to get home. My mom flew home with me, and I'm 47. I'm going to be 48 this year. And my mother flew home with me, and the whole time I was touching her. Because every time I tried to fall asleep, I would, and start myself awake. And somehow, even at 47, having your mommy close,
it makes a big difference.
Helpful, right?
It makes a big difference. Thanks
Right.
to all the mommies. Now, you mentioned your son.
Mm-hmm.
How has this changed your son?
Well, it definitely made him grow up a bit.
Yeah.
It matured him. Mm-hmm. I spent some time when I got home finding ways to recognize him as the hero that he is. Because he didn't panic. He didn't, cry. I mean, he did cry. He told me eventually he did cry. But at the time, he didn't. He picked up my cell phone. He started calling my mom. He called his dad. He just really did all those things that we talked about.
Wow.
He happened to make eye contact with a woman in the crowd who turned out to be a nurse.
Stop.
And which is why I said God was all in this situation.
Yes.
But he just, for a long time, though, after I got home, he was a little afraid to get too close. And I think part of that was, is it going to happen again?
Yeah.
I used to climb in the bed with him when it was time for him to go to sleep, and, we would cuddle, and half the time I'd fall asleep. Well, when I got home and I tried to do that, I started falling asleep. And, when you fall asleep, you breathe real deep. And he jumped up and sat up in the bed, and I said, what's wrong? And he says, you started breathing really heavy. And, and what I realized is that's what I was doing when I had the seizure and then passed out. And so he was worried it was happening again. Fortunately, we're more than a year past. He climbed in my bed the other day, because now we've gotten past that, right? And I said, oh, God, I remember how nice it was when he wasn't in this bed. But he's gotten over it. Kids are resilient. But I think it has also made him feel like, you know what? My mom is tough.
Wow.
And he actually said that. We had one of the local news channels did a piece on what happened to me. And they interviewed him because it was about recognizing him. And the reporter asked him, was there ever a time where you thought Mom might not make it? And he said no. And she was really surprised at how quick he answered. And she said, well, why not? And he says, because my mommy's tough. My mommy, she can do anything. She's tough. And, to have your child feel that way, I guess. And I think about it, and I guess I am kind of tough.
Yeah.
I just have a weak brain, you know?
No, if all of you, the whole package is tough. Seriously, because you think about this, and there are studies that are coming out talking about positive mental attitude and how spirituality, even for some people, if they claim a spiritual component, how that works into their healing and benefit for them, and how it helps the course along in their support system and all of that. And so we talk about it again over and over and over again, whole person, how you connect all the dots, looking at all of it. You thinking about your son, how you have to get home to take care of your family. You saying, you know, I really didn't probably go to that part of how serious this could be, and how, you know, you go to that edge part some people go to and they fall off the cliff and it's like, oh, whoa. Right. But you were just like, no, I gotta keep moving. I gotta get better. I need to do the things that I need to do to get better. And how the whole community came together. Even on our side, you know, we were just like, Pamela's, you know, texting, are there things you need? What do you need done? How can we help?
Absolutely.
You know, and to come to this side of it and be able to sit down around a table with some sister friends about a week ago now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, about a week ago. Right.
Or so, and to be able to celebrate this moment in your life, that it's been a year plus, and we're all able to sit around, was just phenomenal. And I had a ball.
I did too. Everyone did. We had a great time.
You know, when you said to me, extended the invitation, you said, hey, you know, it's been a year. It took me, you know, I was just like, wait, what? And you're like, yeah, it's been a year, April 12th. And so I'm going to have a celebratory, you know, type of event at the house with some sister girls, and, you know, come on over. And it was just, it was for you, but it was for us.
Right. It was for all of us. It really was. And, you know, one of the other things that I want to just touch on in my recovery on this, you know, I'm a lawyer, and a big part of what happened to me was finding the confidence to start doing what I was trying to do again. That probably has been the hardest part of all of this that happened to me, because I didn't trust my ability.
Your brain.
Right.
Because you got to use a lot of cerebral...
Right.
Wow. So give me a little bit more insight into that.
Well, so I had a Neuropsych Evaluation done to see where the deficits were, if there were any. And I was having a really hard time focusing. Focusing on the computer, focusing on issues, you know, just staying focused enough to be able to draw some conclusions that made sense. And one of the findings that they gave me was, it might be time for you to find another career. Which, you know, on some levels okay, because at this age I have a lot of friends who are saying, yeah, maybe it's time to get out of this thing. But the other side of it, I've never been a quitter. You know, and so I was like, well, I don't know, you know. And now, I mean, I'm doing a lot more legal work now again. And, you know, winning some cases. So I think I'm doing okay.
Doing good.
But it just, the idea, because one of the tests they did was an IQ test, right? and the neuropsychologist said, well, you've tested, you know, fairly well, but what this tells me, because of your level of frustration, is that you probably were pretty high on the charts before. And so she says, now you're kind of average, right? and I told
you
I
just
told
not
my
where
mom,
you used to be.
I told my mom, well, this is unacceptable.
I love it. No, just wait a minute. Wait just a second here.
So,
oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So now, you know, I'm kind of, I took a course in grant writing just to find something else that I had not done before, to feel like, you know what, I can do this. You know, and so that is something that I think people need to understand. When things happen, you have to figure out ways to build your confidence up, because your confidence is really...
It takes a blow.
It can.
It takes
and it can make or break you.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really can.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to follow up and ask, was there something that you did, or was there something that you're doing now that helped you gain your confidence back, or helped with the like brain tricks or anything? But that course on grant writing, that does a lot.
Yeah,
And that works out your
I
brain
did
anyway.
that. I did word searches.
Ah.
You know, I started reading again, and I would read until I got tired and put the book down.
Okay.
You know, but it's those things that, I mean, brain exercises is really what they are.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
you got to use it.
Wow, that is such a good point that we need to bring in here too, is that there are things that you need to do, even if it's not part of your particular follow-up, that they say, okay, do check this off, check this off, check that
Yep.
off, that you can start doing on your own and making sure that you build up all of you.
Well, and that's really what it was. The word searches, they seem so simple, but they helped me with focusing and, you know, your brain being able to put those letters together and, you know, all of that. It was simple, but, you know, I think it helped a lot.
Wow. Pam, I am looking at our time, and I could sit here all day, all afternoon, because you're just across the street anyway.
This is what we do.
But before you leave the House Call community, we usually ask our guests to give our community a tip of the day. And it can be on the subject that we're talking about, or on anything else that, you know, is on your heart, that is coming on your heart as we're sitting here talking, that you would like to leave with the community. So if you could leave us with a tip of the day.
Well, in my tip of the day, we were talking about this. It's my toast of life now, which is, you know, I'm living my life to the fullest with no regrets. And that would be my advice to people. Live it to the fullest. Don't have regrets, because once it's done, it's done. Because stress will kill you.
Yes, it will. And with that, we will say see you back here next time. Bye now.